Support for Soccer Today is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the Ultimate Man's Hygiene Bundle, the Performance Package. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, June 6th, 2022. I'm Kevin Laramie, and I'll be joined by Duane Rollins in a second. Did anything happen this weekend? I'm not sure. What should we talk about today? First of all, we'll invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click on that subscribe button and that notification bell to be made aware of whenever we have a brand new video uploaded live on Twitter and podcasts available everywhere. Duane, a quiet weekend in Canadian soccer. Anything in particular happen in Vancouver this weekend?
Well, no, nothing happened in Vancouver. That's the problem here. On Sunday morning, I thought that maybe we might talk about the 2020 Voyageurs Cup final happening on Saturday, which I had a privilege of going to. It was a nice day in Hamilton, and Toronto won a shootout. But we're not going to talk about that game probably ever now, because by the time this mess is over, it'll be so long in the past. But TFC won a game. Bob Bradley won a cup after he was hired, so that's impressive. He's never going to happen again. There we go.
Do you give it to Greg Vanney? What did you do? But we're not going to talk about that today. Canada versus Panama was canceled yesterday on Sunday. It was supposed to take place at BC Place. It was BC no place, no game. Game was canceled. Why? Well, Friday, Saturday, and the practice of Sunday of the Canadian men's national team were canceled. Players feeling disrespected, and we will give you all the details today from the press conference of Nick Bontis, president of Canada Soccer. We will have the audio. We have also the press release from the Canadian men's national team players. We also have some information. We'll dissect some of the quotes from the president, and we will look at the response from the Canadian women's national team, and we will look at the entirety of this. We'll touch on the CSB deal a little bit, but we'll touch more on that deal over the next few days. Duane, if we want to do this properly, I think it's time we give the floor to the Canadian men's national team. Let's read their press release from yesterday. I think it's very important to read this thing because this was quite the shock for fans that are not aware of this entire situation. So here it is. This is the official press release of the Canadian men's national team players. Goes as this. Dear Canada, 4 years ago, we set out on a mission to leave our program in a better place than we found it. At the time, it had been over 30 years since our nation was represented at the FIFA Men's World Cup. Aside from our collective childhood dreams of playing at a World Cup, we hoped that qualifying this team would bring a level of respect and financial opportunity that could raise the standards and opportunities for the next generation of players in our country and change the trajectory of soccer in Canada forever. Despite the unprecedented success of both the women's and men's national team in 2021-2022, make a break here, gold medal for the women's at the last Olympics and Canada qualifying for the World Cup on the men's side, we have seen no changes. Where is the progression? Where is the money? We have recently learned that in 2018, Canada Soccer signed an agreement with Canadian Soccer Business that has completely compromised their ability to leverage the on-field success of our senior national teams. To have any chance of creating substantial, lasting change for all Canada Soccer programs, we need the terms of this agreement to be disclosed and corrected. We want to know who signed this deal that has handcuffed our association. Why have Canada Soccer given up autonomy of the greatest opportunity to grow our program in years? We want to work together with our organization, but the relationship has been strained for years. And now, Canada Soccer has disrespected our team and jeopardized our efforts to raise the standard and effectively advance the game in Canada. In March, we initiated contract discussions with Canada Soccer. Due to executive delaying the process and taking vacations, the negotiation process was unnecessarily prolonged. Canada Soccer waited until the evening of June 2nd to present an archaic offer, and the General Secretary and President of the association only made themselves available for the first time to connect with the players on June 4th, 2022 at 4 p.m. For these reasons, we have reluctantly decided not to play our match today against Panama. It's time we take a stand for the future of soccer in Canada. Going forward, we need transparency and a review of the Canadian Soccer Business Agreement, a leadership team that can optimize this moment and generate revenue from corporate sponsorship that should be used to drive the game forward at all levels for years to come: grassroots, youth, para, and senior programs. An equitable structure with our women's national team that shares the same player match fees, percentage of prize money earned at our respective FIFA World Cups, and the development of a women's domestic league. World Cup compensation that includes 40% of prize money and a comprehensive friends and family package for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And it continues. More former players from the men's, women's, and para team integrated into leadership positions within Canada Soccer Board and Organization. These are the fundamental elements we will stand on guard for to shift soccer in our country. We want to apologize to our fans. Playing at home with your support is everything to us. We hope Canada Soccer will take decisive steps to work with our team so we can be back on the field for our match on June 9th, 3 days from now. We also want to apologize to Panama's players, fans, staff, and association. It's a great privilege and responsibility to represent and play for our country. We stand on guard for you, for us, and for generations to come. The Canadian men's national team. We are brothers. We fear nothing. We stand on guard. Those are the words of the Canadian men's national team. And I apologize for the grammatical mistakes and a couple of different... This was not prepared by a PR firm. This was prepared by the players, and all to them for it. Duane, what is your thoughts on the press release?
Yeah, I mean, you spoke to a little bit at the end, and before we get going too far in there, I want to be clear that we're trying to be balanced about this, and I have spoken to people on both sides of this issue today, so please don't mistake our balance with bias towards any one particular area. I think that the fact that wasn't written professionally speaks to one of the problems here, and that is that the players aren't being legally represented, and there's sort of kind of an ad hoc kind of thing that's going on here, and some of the disconnects that are happening, I think, relates to that. So as much as I am very pro-labor, and anyone who knows me knows this, as much as I'm very pro-player, and anyone who's ever listened to me knows that, I do think that the players' approach is not without criticism here. They're talking about not being respected and all that, and I would argue that maybe the way that they're going about this isn't necessarily the most respectful way back either, to be blunt. Now, that said, there are valid points there. And one of the biggest valid points I think that really comes time and time again is that the CSA for years has had a transparency issue, has had an issue with transparency and being open about stuff. And that in turn leads to a lack of trust. And ultimately what's happening here is you have a side that does not trust their bosses, so to speak. Yeah. And then you have an organization, the CSA, and we'll get a little bit more on that by its nature, because it is a volunteer nature, it's a volunteer organization for the most part. They have professional staff, but yeah, it is mostly like guys like Nick Bontis is a volunteer position, right? Like it's a position where he's elected to, he's not full-time in it, is what I mean. So that creates a complication here, and I think that moving forward, this might be an indication that they might need to professionalize a little bit more, and they might need to shake things up a little bit in terms of leadership there, which a lot of the people have been in that office for a long, long time. Yeah, and that's part of it too.
Yeah, so it is part of it too. And if you listen to the press release, it said Deputy Secretary General. That's because the Secretary General, Peter Montopoli, up until last year, a few months ago, because last year he was appointed the Secretary General of 2026 World Cup for the three countries, for CONCACAF. So he works there now. He's not with the Canadian Soccer Association. He hasn't been replaced. There was a big search that was started last year, and according to multiple sources, one of them, of course, is John Molinaro, and there's a few people that Rick Westhead also have reported about, that before yesterday, the front runner for the Secretary General position at Canada Soccer, which is the highest position full-time. This is a full-time employee that works and is literally the working hands of Canada Soccer. That's a Secretary General. And right now it's the Deputy Secretary General, Earl Cochrane, and he was the one who was favored to get the full job. Now this might be changing because of what happened yesterday and the demand of the players to get new leadership. After the break later on, we will go on the other side of this Rubicon and talk about the Nick Bontis side, and we'll hear Nick Bontis' words from the press conference yesterday, and we will also talk more on that side in the CSB deal. But if we continue on the player side, we'll talk about the women's in a second, because they did issue a response to the men's press release yesterday. When I look at the women and when I look at the men's and the response, it feels like it comes from two different sides. There's two different understanding of it all. And if I just go back to the press release of the men's for a second, when they said we have just learned about this 2018 deal between the CSA and Canadian Soccer Business, it's great, but where were you 4 years ago when it happened? We talked about it on this show on multiple places. This is nothing new. The deal was to, first of all, associate with CSB, that became the negotiating arm of Canada Soccer to negotiate those deals, the right deals across the world. And it ended up that Media Pro got the deal a few weeks later, months later, in 2021, 8 years maybe after. But when we're looking at this partnership with CSB and the fact that they have the rights and then they can just piggyback off Canada and they actually get the profit, not Canada, and there's a big chunk of change. And the figures set on both sides are very different too. And when you add them up, it's more than 100%. So there's somebody somewhere is lying. I don't know who. And there's probably multiple people on each side that are not saying the full truth in this. But it is also interesting when I look at the player side, Duane, and how they feel, or how it seems that they understand a couple of their points from their press release that are not factual. And that has to be clearly said. From the press conference of Nick Bontis and from the players' press releases, there are unfactual points on both sides. And that is important to notice too. You should all actually do some research and see that the players' figures and what they say, it's a bit different than what it is. And the Canadian Soccer Association retorts is also a bit different than where the reality is.
Yeah, look, as I said earlier, the players need representation here. They are players. They're young men for the most part that have not gone through university, that have been athletes and therefore lack the sort of educational background needed to deal with complicated legal negotiations. It's a mistake on their front to not have legal representation right now.
Some of them might, to be fair and devil's advocate, some of them might understand. Some of them are very smart also, but that has nothing to do with experience in the field. And I think that's what's missing, is somebody that is labor experience. We saw the women's national team of the U.S. do the same thing. We saw the U.S. soccer men's national team, and together they were bargaining for the CBA just a few months ago, and together they got it with, of course, equal pay. The fact that they're going at this on two separate fronts, and we'll read the press release from the women right now, it also feels like a distracted battlefront, if you know what I mean. It's not just like the U.S.'s way of doing it. The U.S. women's and men's player got together and made sure that they had this new CBA that had equal pay. Canada, in the same situation, are negotiating on two different fronts.
Yeah, look, they are negotiating two different fronts, and it's counterproductive at this point. As you mentioned, those numbers don't actually add up. And real quickly, I will give you a bit of, I've reported on Twitter this morning, but in terms of the numbers, there's a big disparity that relates to how they're approaching this. The players want a guarantee of 40% of the prize money, period, and they're not factoring tax in that. They want the CSA to guarantee that if it's, let's just use a round number, if it's $1 million, that would be what's 40% of that is 400,000. They want a pure 400,000, right? If that's what the bonus was, they don't want it taxed, and they want the CSA to cover that. And that's, logistically speaking, even almost impossible for the CSA to do. You're dealing with 23 different players from all over the world in different tax brackets and different tax jurisdictions. That just doesn't make sense, right?
And the Canada Revenue Agency wouldn't necessarily agree with all of that too. But there's a lot of, yes, sometimes, well, when you see the other soccer associations and you see our soccer association, and they're different levels of this game. And yes, the better Canadian men's player live in a better day-to-day operation lives with their club than they will ever have at the national team, and that is a fact.
Yeah, look, I want to be clear with somebody. I'm listening to myself here, and I know that if someone's listening here, they might view me as being pro-CSA in this conversation, and that's because I'm simply picking apart this and trying to objectively look at it and present the other side, because a lot of people right now are just out there yelling sack the CSA at the top of their lungs, which is the knee-jerk reaction of a lot of people always when anything happens. And this is coming on the heels of the Iran fiasco, which was a fiasco,
Yes.
wasn't handled well.
So that's
and
two
we
fiascos.
talked about it here.
That's 2 fiascos in a week, Dwayne.
Yeah, and that's causing complication with this. So look, I'm not like the players deserve to get paid what they deserve. The question is, what's that number? And that number needs to have lawyers in the room talking to each other, not players tweeting press releases or Instagramming press releases or however they released it, right? Like that's not how this gets solved. They need to sit down at a table. And look, the CSA, even if it was June 4th when they showed up at 4 p.m., I don't care that it was 4 p.m. Get in there and start talking. That's childish there. And I'm going to call them out on that. That is petty. That is silly. That is old and tough. Athletic men getting their back up that they felt disrespected. That is not helpful in this situation.
No, but also the fact that they were disrespected, and the only reason, from what I'm told, that meeting actually took place is because they didn't train on Friday. And they were overt saying, we're not going to train, let's talk. That's why it happened to begin with. And no progression. So you're basically two sides calling each other's bluffs. And we saw that press conference. We'll hear some parts of it after the break. Well, it didn't look good on either side. When you look at the press conference release, the press release from the men's player, and you listen to the press conference from the Nick Bontis, and you look at the press conference and the mannerism and the behaviors of people involved, it did not look professional on either side. And there's not a good look on either side. And guess what the headlines are in France today? Guess what the headlines are in RMC Sport in French? After foot tonight, you know what they're going to talk about? They're going to talk about Canada, you know what, to the bed, doing, well, being the headline for not the right reason. Everywhere in the world, they're talking about this right now, and that's a shame. They're not talking about Davies and David being the two best players in CONCACAF. They're talking about Canada Soccer Association not forking out the money, because that will be, of course, the perception. And until it's changed, and that's why it's important to do balance reporting and do both, because there's fault on both sides. Maybe the balance is leaning a bit more towards the CSA. The figures demanded on one side and the figures available on the other are probably not the same. There's going to have to be a balance found literally on the sheet, on the financial sheet. But one thing that we will talk about after the break, Duane, is very important, is to listen to the other side of the CSA's president and break down a couple of his quotes, because I have to say, he was a quote machine yesterday, and we will talk about it after the break. But now, I want to bring you all to something brand new, something different. And yes, I want to talk about Manscaped. It is a sponsor of today's show, and Manscaped does something really good. It gives you good grooming, and I have to say, I've been in need of grooming for a while, everywhere, not just for my family jewels, as Manscaped would say. And I'm really impressed by all the things that are available in this package, Dorian. And I know boxers are always useful, so the boxers are really good. But my favorite thing is not that. It is, yes, the Lawnmower 4.0 is great, and the Weed Whacker for the nose and the hair is really good. And that's what I really like it, because on TV, I like to have grooming, and I can groom my face, my sideburn, and of course, other areas of my body that shows on camera. And a lot of them that don't show on camera, I can use the groomer for also. And when you get this performance package 4.0 at manscaped.com and you enter code soccer today, get 20% off, worldwide free shipping. Also, no tug, no shrug. It will be the best body shave you would ever have. And of course, it supports Soccer Today also. So you can go to manscaped.com/soccer today or discount code soccer today, and you'll get your 20% off and free worldwide shipping. We'll be right back after this short break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Kev Laramie with Duane Rollins as we now switch to the response of the women's national team. Here is the women's national team's response to what happened yesterday. The women's national team has been bargaining in good faith with Canada Soccer since January 29th, 2022. We have been clear throughout these discussions and before that we are seeking an agreement with Canada Soccer that will provide equal pay to members of our team relative to the men's national team. The women's national team will not accept an agreement that does not offer equal pay. On Friday, Canada Soccer tabled a proposal to both the men's and women's national teams. We continue to review that proposal despite not yet having the benefit of all the information that we have asked Canada Soccer to provide regarding its financials, including with respect to its agreement with Canada Soccer Business. However, the women's national team believes that the CSA's most recent proposal represents a positive step towards pay equity between the men's and women's team, and one that provides a basis for further negotiations with the CSA. We are happy to hear that the men's national team is asking Canada Soccer for an equitable structure with our women's national team. However, to be clear, the women's national team does not view equal FIFA percentages as between our respective teams as equal pay. We look forward to working with both Canada Soccer and the men's national team towards a deal that offers true pay equity and that advances the sport of soccer in Canada for the benefit of all of us, the players of the Canadian women's national team. Now, you can look at the difference of the graphic. Yes, that's not that important, but how it's written, what it says, and the legal verbiage used. This was prepared, Duane, by a legal representative in a PR firm. And it does speak about the same points, but in a bit of a different manner. And I don't want to blame the players. They did the best with what they had right now. But there's two different ways that the same negotiations are approached.
No, 100%. It's far more professional. The women's press release than what looks like something that they whipped off gathered around someone's desk and on Microsoft Word and tossed it out there, right? Like that's a pro press release and it speaks to a negotiation that's ongoing that's happening with lawyers in the room. Which again, I'll go back to. The men need to get to that. But the other thing that I take away from that women's press release is bluntly, if you read between the lines, it sounds like they're a little irritated that they weren't consulted or dealt with before they were used as a bargaining point in a hastily made out press release. That's not ideal. They clearly did not talk to the women's national team in any capacity, but they were happy to use them to add a point to their point. Oh, we're also going to get them the women money, but they're not working together, and they should be. Maybe they should talk to the lawyers that the women are using and team together to do the negotiation together, because that's what works in the States. Look, obviously, one good takeaway, though, I'll be positive for a second here and quickly. I noticed we have a lot more listeners than usual live today. If you want to interact with us, just tweet at us and we'll try to address it if we see it come up, just if you'd like to. There's more than usual. But the one positive that might come from this is that all parties are talking about pay equity. And there does seem to be a commitment, and the people I spoke to this morning also underlined this, that there absolutely will be an equal distribution that works for the women, that pays them at a rate that is dollar for dollar. The words that I was told today, dollar for dollar equal, not dodging things, not using percentages, not using different structures. It will be the men get $10, the women get $10. It'll be more than that, but to use an easy to understand figure. That's what I was stressing, and that's a positive. Yeah. That's one positive day. That's it.
And we've been trying to be balanced, so I'll just say things really like I'll give. Though this is opinion, this is not facts, but I'm not on one side or the other. I know people on both sides. In my soccer life, I've worked with people on both sides, from people that are playing and people that are signing things on the other side. So I know people on both sides, and I'm not taking sides. And I think that's important to note, that I want the players to get what they deserve. What do they deserve and what they ask for? Are they the same? They could be, but it also could be different. We don't have the figures, and like the women's press release mentions, there's no figures available. CSB came out with a press release later yesterday, and we can maybe go deeper in that press release later in the week. But I think it's time now, Duane, that we listen to Nick Bontis, Canada Soccer president, his press conference yesterday. This is the 3-minute segment that was provided by Canada Soccer on all the social media platform. The 3 minutes and the retort of Nick Bontis, and after that, we will break it down. And if you're watching us live on video, well, we ain't going anywhere. You will see our reactions from our faces while we listen to Nick talk about yesterday's cancellation of Canada versus Panama.
Merci, bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes très déçus du refus de l'équipe nationale masculine de jouer aujourd'hui. Nous aimerions tout d'abord présenter nos excuses à tous les fans de Canada Soccer et désirions retirer notre gratitude pour soutien continu. Canada Soccer is very disappointed the men's national team players' decision to refuse to play today. We would like to firstly apologize to all of our Canada Soccer fans and reaffirm our gratitude to you for your continued support. I am sorry that this game did not occur today. Canada Soccer has been working with the players in good faith to find a path forward that is fair and equitable to all. We would like to have a facts-based discussion within the fiscal reality that Canada Soccer has to live with every day. Canada Soccer is committed to the principles of fairness and equity, and we believe we presented a fair offer to the players. We benchmarked our offer against other national teams from around the world. On the issue of gender equity raised in the players' letter, Canada Soccer's offer also committed to provide the exact same terms to our women's national team. As we move forward, Canada Soccer's strategic commitment is to support all of our programs, from grassroots right through to the elite first teams. Canada Soccer's relationship with Canada Soccer Business has been pivotal in building soccer and growing the game in this country. Canada Soccer's business was pivotal for the game last night that Toronto FC played with Forge, which was one of the most exciting finals we've ever had. Pivotal for the investment of our alumni national team players who've now come back to invest their own money in concert with the CSB to build the Canadian Premier League. They have invested substantial funds and support to promote soccer in this country at a critical time for its growth. In partnership together, we have built a men's professional league in this country, creating a domestic pathway for soccer talent from across Canada. Canada Soccer continues to be responsive. We remain ready and available to continue to work immediately with the players towards our collective goal of performing at our best as we approach Qatar. In the meantime, Canada Soccer will continue its preparations to get all of our national teams ready for their respective competitions to compete with excellence in the coming months.
All right, Duane. So let's react to a couple of the things here. I have some notes. Facts-based discussion. Yeah, that's fair. That's actually true. Needs to be a facts-based discussion on both sides. The Canada Soccer Association's facts also needs to be present as the facts and real demands of the men's national team. I think that's true.
Well, yeah. Look, I've been, I think maybe a little more critical of the players' position than, maybe makes some of our listeners happy today, or maybe even makes me happy in the sense because I am pro player, as I stated before, but I'm going to be critical of the CSA here. That press release was a train wreck.
Who talked about the Canadian Premier League? It's not even in the conversation. And why was it like a minute of those 3 minutes on the Canadian Premier League? Like, no, that's because is that where the money went? That's what the questions are asking. And those, of course, are questions. We don't know the answers to that, but that is part of it. And you're right. I think there was a lot of things. It's true, facts-based, but it's also on the CSA's part where they have to bring the figures. It's transparency time. The U.S. were very transparent with the new CBA. We need the same in Canada. We need that transparency. We need, first of all, if reality is the way I think it is, if you're actually honest and transparent, people will be more on the CSA side because they'll see the real figures and be like, oh, wait, there's a lot more on the expenses column than on the revenue column. Yeah, the thing is, it's all compartmentalized, and you have to understand the difference of all. But that's why fact-based is important. And when you mix Canadian Soccer Business, Canadian Soccer Association, the Canadian Premier League, One Soccer, Media Pro, and all those things, it's hard to see truly what draws things and what is the answer to this. So facts-based, yes, but the CSA is also included in that facts-based conversation.
Of course. And look, the other thing that made that press release pretty bad yesterday was, I remember when I was a teenager and I used to have a bit more of a temper. My mother would always stress to me that if I was angry, I should take a step away, take a deep breath, maybe go for a walk before I would address the situation. I don't think the CSA did that yesterday. I think they went into that press release hot. They were angry. They were frustrated.
Guns
and they
blazing.
Let that show.
Yeah, guns blazing. And another quote, and I think we can maybe look at our screen now and see this quote, because those are very interesting quotes that are kind of true, but again, I'm going to have to bring some criticism to the CSA here. So let's look at these quotes. This is from Nick Bontis, CSA president. Even without futsal, beach soccer, para soccer, U20, U17, referee development, coach development on both sides, women and men, we could not afford this deal. All right, I'll react to that quote. Well, at the end of the quote, it says, it is untenable as written, which is very nice, and it makes a very big, beautiful headlines. Might be true too. But you mentioned without futsal, beach, and para. When I look at Canada Soccer Association's day-to-day operations, oftentimes I feel it is without futsal, beach, and para. Para is really supported on Olympic years. Is it supported the same level the rest of the years? Beach and futsal competitions are treated last minute and built with teams that are existing and, of course, are not treated to the level that other countries do so. So if we're going to use futsal and beach in this conversation saying, hey, look, we can't fund the other programs if we fund the men's national team to the level that it's asked, I say fine, but you're not funding them properly to begin with.
Well, that all comes down to a resource issue, right? To put their position out there, that's what they'd say, is that the reason they can't fund them any more than they do is because they don't have the money, and then we suddenly have this windfall of money coming in, and the players want to take all of it. That's that 45%. I think this needs to be stated outright. The 45%, the 40% the CSA wants to keep isn't, for Nick Bontis' new pool. It's to fund those programs. It's to increase those programs. Maybe to have a year-round under-23 program. Something that I've been batting on for a long time is they need to have that thing operating more consistency. It's all of those things. Look, again, if the CSA was more transparent about stuff, more transparent about its budget, other than the little summary that we sometimes get, then people might understand or believe that, because it's just a lack of trust.
Yeah.
And that all stems basically, the other big criticism I will have from the CSA, and we talked about this earlier, is it needs to be more professional. And you mentioned Earl Cochrane earlier as a possible person to take over that general secretary job. Yeah. That's a mistake.
Yeah, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. You need exterior blood, as we say.
Yeah, Earl Cochrane's been part of the furniture forever. He was in the TFC. Let's try that for a third time. TFC's head office in the 07, 08, 09 era, then moved to the CSA. He's been around forever. He is as insider as insiders get. That's not what they need right now. They don't need an insider in that role. I'm not trying to attack, if you're listening, Earl, I'm not trying to attack you as a person. I'm putting this out there that you would be a mistake in that role if you're listening. So I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel. And we need new blood in there. You need outside perspective. You need outside perspective that has corporate connections to help them deal with those things. That's what needs to happen.
It's true, but I think it's also true that we need to look at this in a balanced way, and I hope that in today's show we're able to present it more a balanced way. And sometimes our statement probably felt like we were talking about more about taking the CSA side, and sometimes we're actually criticizing the CSA because that's where the real fault lies. It's on both sides. And I think if we sum up the show into a couple of different points, I think for the players' side, what fails to land is the legal representation and the management of the perception to the same level as the women's national team showed in this very similar time frame and similar way of handling a press release. I think working together as a full unit for the players from top to bottom and vertically aligning the players' position and direction from men's to women to para to all others is very important going forward. I don't think it can be negotiated different because a negotiation is about leverage. And the players are going to Qatar and they felt like they had the biggest of leverage and decided to use it, which is in a normal negotiation, it is exactly what you need to do. But I think along the way, there was a failure to recognize that leverage really exists if you only get together. And even then, you can maybe make it better for all of them. So that's the one side of the players that I don't necessarily would have done it the same way. When we're looking at the CSA, why do you combat it? Why do you go up to the front and right away press conference with a reaction and you make it a confrontation to begin with? That is not the way I would have handled it also. I would have gone with, yes, we actually support our players' decision. We're going to meet the table and you say what you need to be said and you actually show part of the way to meet somewhere. Even if you don't meet down the middle, they have to feel respected. And that's a failure of the Canadian Soccer Association to make their players feel heard. That's what it's about. And it's about leverage. The players felt like they had a better leverage than they were treated for. And they decided to use that leverage and use this very short opportunity. It's the only time they could have done this. It was the friendly. Because if the thing happened for the Nations League, that could actually put in jeopardy Canada's participation in the World Cup because of FIFA. It's a FIFA event. It's a Nations League, CONCACAF Nations League by FIFA. And if this doesn't happen, if you don't show up, there is usually financial and sporting consequences, which could be a disqualification from Canada's first participation at the World Cup. That's the ultimate leverage used by the Canadian men's national team players to get it done. And they felt they needed to do that. This is the last-ditch deterrent that they used. So they felt they were disrespected to that level. So I think there's fault on both sides.
Look, there is fault on both sides for sure. And I go back to that comment about the CSA needed to come in less hot. They needed to have a calmer voice in there. They needed to maybe have a lawyer up there, someone that was dispassionate about it, just presenting the facts, saying, like, look, we financially don't think this deal is there. We're committed to negotiate with the players. We've set up some meetings. Let's go. That's what they needed to say. And that's what needs to happen now, because we use relationship analogies on this show a lot. I think there's a relationship analogy here. This is like a couple fighting over something.
Well, it says I'm gonna leave if you don't do something, and they decided to leave. So how you handle it going forward? This is one way or the other.
Yeah, both sides need now to figure a way forward to solve this for Thursday, because as you say, they cannot miss that game on Thursday. That would be a disaster of epic proportions. The players need to realize that, and they made their point. They've canceled this game, which is a significant financial hit to the CSA. That they made their point. They've got our attention now. The best thing the players can do is sit down, say, we've agreed to negotiate. We want this and this and this. This is our position. We're not going to back down from that. We're going to go to the table. We're going to play these games in good faith, and then we will get back to the table this summer and work this out. And we're not going to play our games in September if we don't get this settled before then. That's what they need to say. If they dig their heels in and cause a financial penalty further to the Canadian Soccer Association, I don't think they kick them out of the World Cup. I don't. But they could kick them out of the Nations League, send them back to Group C, which would be a disaster because you're having tiny little islands come in here and have to go all the way back up to the top.
It's true.
And you have to pay for that.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, it's a weird way because Canada might be qualified outright for the next World Cup, and it's a weird thing. But I think all those things have to be weighed into this decision, and it'll be very interesting to see how it's handled today. Because both on the Canadian Soccer Association side and on the players' side today has to be a diffusal type of day after yesterday's fireworks. Today it's okay. Let's let the dust settle just a little bit, and how about we meet later today? Yeah, and players, if there's any players listening, and sometimes they do under their burner accounts or otherwise. Sometimes it's from their regular account, which we salute you, players. I know who you are. Yeah, look, get a lawyer. Lawyer up, go, folks. Do not do this yourself. Call the same one as the women have. I think you should get together. Yeah, I know we live in a world where everyone thinks they're an expert in everything. That simply is not the case. You're a good soccer player. You may be a very smart person. Many of you are, but you're not a lawyer. You're not a contract lawyer. Have contract lawyers deal with this. Let the CSA and the lawyers get together, work some stuff out. You concentrate on what you do. This is not going to get solved in the playground way. Batting heads. This is not going to happen. No, it's true. It's not going to happen that way. We hope you enjoyed today's show. You can find the podcast version available everywhere. I hope you were able to enjoy our balanced view of this issue. It's never just white. It's never just black. It's always shades of gray. And in this shades of gray, it is important to understand where the leverage lies, where the truth is, and it's always somewhere in the middle. On that note, we hope you enjoyed today's show. You can find the podcast everywhere. You can find the Two Solitudes Soccer podcast where Duane and I talk about the Canadian men's national team. Who are the overrated players, the underrated player? What should Canada's theme song be heading into Qatar? You can find all these answers on the latest episode of the Two Solitudes podcast, available at patreon.com/2Solitudes. And before I say goodbye, I want to say that it's important to go to manscaped.com. You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code SOCCERTODAY. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. As always, until next time, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kev Laramie. We wish you a great soccer, and we'll be with you very shortly. In the next few days, we'll be with you. But until then, we wish you a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.